Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat?
Obviously, from a defensive standpoint, the defensive staff is there, and so you kind of know what the structure is going to be. And yet, they got a couple of new pieces, so we don't know what adjustments they're going to make or what's going to be different than maybe what we saw last year. Really, the same thing offensively. We had a chance to go up against Canales a couple of times last year, and so I think from a schematic standpoint, we have an idea of what the system is like, and yet with a different quarterback, I don't know how they're gonna want to utilize him.
Dennis Allen, certainly challenges facing Carolina with a new coach, and Dave Canales. Canales was in Tampa with Baker Mayfield a year ago, so some familiarity. Let's learn a little more. Alex Zietlow covers the Panthers for the Charlotte Observer. He joins us now. Alex, we appreciate it, man. How are you?
Oh, I'm doing great. Thanks for having me on the show.
No, it's our pleasure. So let's talk about Dave Canales. What's different so far through the first training camp with a new coach?
Oh, wow. Well, I don't want to sound cliche because I know that at this point in the year, good vibes spring eternal. Yeah. But he is a guy who will just infuse this organization he has been infusing this organization with energy, with enthusiasm, and with some optimism. I mean, the Panthers, consider this, what this fan base has gone through the past couple of years. This is year 3, and they're learning a new coach for a third straight year. So you had Matt Rule 2 years ago. You had Frank Reich this year. He didn't even make it. Or this past year, he didn't even make it a full season. And now you're having Dave Canales, this guy who, in a lot of ways, worked really hard to be an overnight success. He was this guy who had lasted in the end, was an assistant over in Seattle for over a decade, and then after what he did with Geno Smith, making him the comeback player of the year in 2022, he got an opportunity to be the offensive coordinator in Tampa Bay, and then kind of supervised a resurgent year with Baker Mayfield, and that kind of launched him onto this path of becoming a head coach. So this is his first time being a head coach with the Carolina Panthers, and he is bringing this enthusiasm. You can feel it in the building, something that you couldn't really feel a year ago with Frank Reich, who was more of a level-headed, chill guy. But to answer your question, that's what you can feel, and you can also feel a little bit of Bryce Young not feeling the weight of the world on his shoulders, which you kind of felt that a little bit last year, and I think Dave has something to do with that.
So that's obviously a great transition. Canales had reclamation projects with Geno Smith, with Baker Mayfield, and now Bryce Young. So why is it going to be different?
Well, they have provided quite a bit of data to explain why it's going to be different. Among that is Bryce Young's sole drive in the preseason, where against the Buffalo Bills, he only played in one of 3 preseason games, and that was the preseason finale against the Buffalo Bills. And he led a touchdown drive, which is something these Panthers didn't really see all that much of last year. If you remember, the Panthers' final 2 games were shutout losses, one of which featured the owner throwing a drink on someone, which caused the whole scene. But
what a moment!
Yeah, but anyway, that one touchdown pass, or that one touchdown drive that Bryce put together against the Buffalo Bills, you saw a little bit of everything, and you saw a little bit of everything that Bryce Young could offer this offense and could offer this team in the future. You also saw some stuff that he didn't really do last year. Among them, there was a 4th and 3. They were kind of dwelling around midfield. It's the preseason. Canales was like, all right, let's go for it. It's 4th and 3. Bryce takes the snap out of the shotgun. Play kind of breaks down, and then you got to see Bama Bryce, the dazzling quarterback that he was in Alabama. He rolls to his right, makes extra time, and he finds Deontay Johnson along the sidelines. Deontay Johnson, by the way, a pickup for the Panthers. They traded for him. got him out of Pittsburgh, brought him to Carolina, and now he's kind of separated himself as the wide receiver one. So just in that play alone, you can kind of see how things might be different here. You got Bryce Young, who is a bit more creative. He's like I said before, the weight of the world is kind of off his shoulders a little bit. You can kind of tell that. You can kind of tell that because of the connection that he and Dave have had. And then you also got weapons on the outside that are getting separation. You got Deontay Johnson, who's among the best route runners in the NFL at his best. Obviously, you got Adam Thielen, who had a resurgent year last year on the inside, kind of more of a slot, short yardage sort of guy. And then, of course, you got Xavier Legette, the draft pick that the Panthers have invested so much into. So that's the data that they are applying, and that's what we think is going to be different about this offense. Of course, we're not going to know until week one.
Alex Zietlow is our guest on Twitter at AlexZietlow05. Charlotte Observer covers the Panthers. I was going to ask you about the weapons offensively. It sounds like there's some confidence that there is enough. Where is the question mark offensively on this roster?
I think it still dwells in Bryce Young. Not to talk too much about a singular player, because obviously football is a team sport. But as much as we do know about Bryce, and as much as we do know that, how much the team is confident in him and how much they are trying to elevate him at every turn, they actually a lot of the offseason moves this year have been about empowering Bryce. They have really upgraded that interior offensive line. They went out and got Robert Hunt, signed him to a $100 million deal. They got someone at the other guard spot, Damian Lewis from Seattle. They moved their best offensive lineman, Austin Corbett, from the guard spot to the center. So their interior offensive line is quite good. They have tried to upgrade on the outside. Tight end position is still a little bit murky. But at the end of the day, the question mark is going to be on Bryce Young. Oh, and then, of course, in the backfield is actually relatively proven considering the rest of the offense, with Chuba Hubbard on a contract year, off of his best year in the NFL so far, looking healthy, looking good. Miles Sanders, this is kind of a prove-it year for him after getting paid last year and not playing up to his potential last year. So the backfield's good. Tight end is kind of murky with some question marks. The offensive line is a clear upgrade from before. The wide receiving core is a clear upgrade from before. The question mark is with Bryce Young. And this offense, this team, this organization will go as he goes, at least in the short-term future.
Excuse me. Alex, if you flip it over to the defensive side of the ball, this was a team that allowed nearly 25 points a game a year ago. Not much went well for Carolina. I mean, it's how you end up picking first in the draft. How much better are they defensively?
Well, it's interesting that you say that. I mean, that 25-point that stat is relevant and it's important. It does require context, I think, because this defense was actually fourth in the NFL when it comes to total defense, when it comes to total yards allowed. The points factor was largely because the offense just couldn't keep the defense off the field. The offense also committed a lot of turnovers, which, made for bad field positioning, which made for the defense eventually breaking, which made the floodgates open and stuff like this. Another important thing to remember about this defense is they had a lot of really good pass rushers, or a couple really good pass rushers on the defense a year ago, among them Brian Burns. Mm-hmm. And they never could unleash them, really. And that's a product of the fact that they were down so often, and teams were just content running the ball. I know a year ago, you can feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but I think the Saints really kind of picked the Carolina defense apart by virtue of dipping and dunking the ball. They didn't really have to make the big, explosive, deep play. I mean, maybe they pulled off one or two. They didn't really have to because they weren't concerned about what the Panthers' offense was going to do. So at least that was the theme through a couple other games. So anyway, but the defense has been upgraded in a variety of ways. They extended Derek Brown, the record-breaking defensive tackle. They have added a couple guys who are familiar with the defensive coordinator, Edro Evero's system. They have they did lose a little bit on the pass rushing side, obviously with Brian Burns going up to New York, obviously with Frankie Louvu going to the Washington Commanders, and Frankie was like the heart and soul of this team last year. They did add Jadeveon Clowney on one side of the pass rush. Evero has a 3-4 scheme, and Clowney's going to be on that right side. They don't know who's going to be on that left side. So I'm kind of rambling, but your question of how did they upgrade on defense, actually, most people in Carolina would say that they didn't necessarily get better on defense because something had to change on offense. And if you're going to that's kind of how the league works, or I guess, because if you need to upgrade on offense, that's going to come at the expense of the defense. So, I think the Saints-Panthers matchup will be compelling because, 24 new guys. There are 24 new guys on this Panthers 53-man roster.
Wow.
I know the NFL has a lot of turnover, but golly, that seems like a lot.
Well, when you're the worst team in the NFL, turning over the roster is probably a heady play. And the coaching staff as well as they've done. Hey, real quick, Alex, we're up against a break, but if the Panthers have success, or a 4-point dog in the Dome on Sunday, if they have success and win it, what does that blueprint look like?
That blueprint will be, oh goodness. That blueprint, I think, will be putting the ball, well, firstly, it'll be avoiding turnovers. And perhaps making some, because the Saints were what? Plus 11 in turnover margin last year, which is just like ridiculously good. The Panthers, meanwhile, were not as good at the turnover margin part. But the other thing on the defensive side will be forcing Derek Carr to make big plays, because that's not something that they forced him to do last year by virtue of the offense, by virtue of the whole situation last year. So if something good is going to happen for Carolina, those two things are going to happen.
Alex Zietlow, Charlotte Observer, covers the Panthers. Enjoy the game Sunday, man. Thanks for the time.
Yes, thank you.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.